This piece made some light waves. I'll call them light. I didn't see the theme covered that I wanted to, or that I was most struck by covered as people were sharing this around. So we're going to cover it here. And it's a profile by Outside Magazine on Chef Joshua Skenes. And it's called, quote, "This oddball chef wants to serve you wild animals," end quote. Ooh, right? And it's very in line with the Lumi Island piece and the overall theme of these solo episodes. And this is a news story that I not only shared in the community, but I also send this out as part of the 80/20 Edge newsletter. That's also something that's new since we've probably last spoken on a solo podcast episode. And so if you aren't subscribed there yet, quick shameless plug again, it arrives in your inbox every week, and I talk about asymmetric upside, how to sharpen your skills, and work in this industry in a more sustainable way. And so you can usually hear about some of these stories first if you're subscribed there. That's also in the description. So let's start with a quote. Quote, "Ferociously ambitious chef reaches top of a culinary world and realizes he can still hit a higher target only by hunting and killing wild animals and serving them at the source. Stymied by law and regulation, he cobbles together a workaround. He buys and builds a wilderness estate where he can live in a rural splendor, doing what he loves most, hunting and fishing and foraging. He includes a laboratory element that coincidentally involves support staff and cooking facilities that are the equal of the world's finest restaurants. Then adds gorgeous guest cabins spaced widely over the property and charges some totally bonkers price per night so he can invite those guests to his own spectacular manor home for the greatest free dinners ever eaten by human beings." End quote. And if this semi-summary / teaser floats your boat, if you want to see how someone is approaching a concept like this, please go ahead and read the article. There are a ton of themes that I think we've touched on before. I've been critical of Skenes in previous episodes. I've eaten at Saison and Angler. I think the food at both rivals some of the best restaurants in the world. His ability to cook and source and present is not what I'm critical of here. We've talked about projects that, cater to the 1% of the 1% before as well. And if you know anything about the 1000 True Fans article, you know that you can still get niched down incredibly small and still find your audience. Fun thing that, you numbers nerds might actually get excited about is that I saw this quote from Jack Butcher on his Twitter that basically said, quote, "If only the 0.00001% of the internet population buy from you, you still have 4,000 customers." End quote. Because there's something like 4.5 billion people online. And so I'm actually not surprised that he's finding people to sign up for these experiences. And I'm actually approaching this whole article from a bit of a different angle. And I need to continue on with this piece because it's painting him, the author of the piece is painting him as a genius in one dimension. And I think that's easy. But across the board, him as a person, him as a boss, him as a coworker, partner, I don't think it's that simple. Quote, "Curiously, Skenes' peers are reluctant to speak on the record about him. Plausible explanations include his ferocious personality and unconventional path. Ambitious chefs typically cut their teeth through years of grinding apprenticeship in big-name restaurants around the world, honing others' methods before striking out on their own. They also typically forge close alliances with colleagues. Skenes skipped most of that and somehow still rocketed to the top of the game." End quote. And this has been echoed from other analyses of top performers outlining the cost of success. And the trope is you can't just cherry pick all of Elon Musk's technical knowledge and money and meme making on Twitter. You also have to take his sleepless nights and stomach-wrenching risk and potentially shallow relationships and his dissatisfaction that's constantly plaguing him to do new things and all of that. And what's important, and the lesson that I hope I'm sharing with this piece, is to acknowledge both and accept that everybody has different versions of success. And then you can choose and traverse your path accordingly versus attempting to mimic your heroes with a disappointing outcome. Because, again, you can't cherry pick individual things. And it's so frustrating too, because even looking at this article, you know, when they have the article and then they do that section in the middle of the article where they make a quote from it super big. And so if you're the person that's just skimming, you will skim just that piece. That last quote I read, talking about ferocious personality, not getting along with colleagues, they typically forge close alliances, but Skenes skip most of that. They write that in a way where it doesn't acknowledge the negatives about his relationships with people. And so it's like, what are we encouraging? Are we encouraging this kind of like, fuck cutting your teeth, fuck getting experience, fuck forging relationships, just go do it by yourself because you're a genius and you can just do it alone? And that's all I basically really wanted to say. I think that Josh Skenes should be able to do whatever he wants as long as it's within legal bounds, and he's clearly finding a way to work around this whole thing. Clearly, he's too smart for all of us, and whatever it is about his current setup, there isn't satisfaction or fulfillment to be found for him in an environment like Cezanne or Angler, or in this kind of fine dining circuit of Michelin life, San Francisco, LA. And there seems to be this deeper psychological obstacle that he's grappling with, feels misunderstood potentially. And this provides that outlet for him, and it gives him the right mixture of exclusivity and control. And as far as I know, he's being self-aware enough to acknowledge, I don't actually function well in an environment where I'm running a 60-person team. So I'm going to buck that. I'm going to do it in a way where I can only work with, again, exclusivity and control, which more aligns with my strengths, and that's what I'm going to lean into. So as much as I hope that he's able to reach a true state of happiness and satisfaction in his work, I'm also wanting to make sure that we as an industry call that for what it is, and we acknowledge the downsides of having qualities like that. Because he's clearly not the best chef to work for. He's clearly not the best chef to do business with. And notice that I can be complimentary to his cooking ability and his ingenuity and his drive and his vision, but I can also be critical of other aspects. I don't want there to be this sense that I have a beef with the guy or that I don't respect him, but putting this stuff up on a pedestal, this you can be a dick and still skyrocket to the top of the game or whatever the fucking journalist said, that's how we get people who don't have his type of self-awareness feeling like they have permission to do it. And what they'll do is they'll use this excuse, even if they don't say it explicitly, they'll have it running in the back of their head after they read a piece like this. They'll say, well, I saw that one guy who does this. And that's all that people need as permission to continue to behave like this. And then that becomes their MO, and they use it as almost this like pass to be a dickhead. Because if I just keep it up for long enough, if I just get to that point, someone else will write about me in the way that I saw. You know what I mean? I think you see where I'm going. And it's not a fair, it's not always a fair comparison, but I think you kind of get my gist.